Joining us now, Labour's Mike Tapp, the MP for Dover and Deal, and what colleagues have described as a rising star on the Labour benches, which I'm not sure is a good thing or a bad thing for your future career prospects. But welcome to Never Mind the Ballots. Mike, look, last night's vote, you had the MPs for Rochdale, for Rotherham, for Oldham, all of these towns blighted by decades of horrific scandal, whipped by the Prime Minister to vote against an inquiry. How did that make you feel in that division lobby? So
firstly, you're right, it is horrific, and that there's no divide on that. Everyone agrees that we've got to get on top of this problem and deal with these vile paedophiles, and I've got experience of that in the past with the National Crime Agency, and we're fully committed to that. Now, on this vote, there were two reasons that we took this line. The first reason, we've already had a lengthy inquiry, which ended...
broad inquiry that encompassed some parts of the, some towns, 6 towns, I believe. 50 towns have been blighted by this issue. We don't know if it's still going on now. That inquiry was a much broader inquiry.
So you're right in saying it's broad, but we've got to look at what Professor Jay has said as well, which is that this doesn't need a further inquiry. And actually, it's time for action now. And that's really important because there are numerous recommendations from that report that need implementing. And the second reason that I was going to come to for voting for the bill last night or against the amendment is we need to get those amendments in. And within the bill that this would have completely wrecked and destroyed are measures to protect children. So it's about action.
So another day, another vote, a different piece of legislation, or perhaps a sort of an opposition motion, something like that. You wouldn't necessarily vote against a new inquiry.
So what we've said at the moment is we don't need a new inquiry.
Well, the Prime Minister said yesterday they were open-minded.
Absolutely, and that doesn't mean that in the future there's never going to be a national inquiry, right? That doesn't rule that out. But if we're putting in, or the Conservatives are putting in legislation that's going to destroy a bill that will help children across the board, including children's safety, of course we're going to vote that through. And actually it makes me really angry that this has been used as a dividing factor in Parliament when it's really clear why we're voting.
But surely there's a long overdue fact. Look, this issue has been going on, except for decades. It's sort of dripped out slowly, and so there hasn't been that moment of national anger and national reckoning. Do you think it's a good thing, though, that we're finally actually having a pretty stark, honest conversation about what the Leader of the Opposition says is one of the biggest scandals in British history?
I think there's been ongoing anger against paedophiles, paedophile rings, grooming gangs.
Then why haven't we talked about it in the same way?
Well, I think we have spoken about it. And actually, what we've seen from the previous government is lethargy, because there were recommendations that they were not implementing. And the bill yesterday that we, the voting against the amendment has enabled a bill to go through to the second reading, which does protect children. And that's really important. And Keir Starmer's got a record of protecting children. As DPP, he reopened investigations into child grooming gangs.
For whatever reason, I think Keir Starmer has a good case has a good case to make for his actions as DPP. But he managed to slightly sort of overcook that on Monday by basically saying that people calling for a new inquiry were jumping on a far right bandwagon. That's not helpful language, is it?
Look, there's many people that I speak to who are not on the far right who want to see paedophiles and grooming gangs.
So why did he say it's a far-right bandwagon?
Including me, by the way.
Yeah, and me. But
Keir Starmer.
Why does he say it's a far-right bandwagon?
The important thing now that we're looking at is that we are putting through that legislation to protect children. That's what the Labour Party are doing. And the Conservatives were actually attempting to block that. And I find that infuriating, to be quite honest with you.
But so just to be clear, you're not ruling out another inquiry. There could be another inquiry, and on another day, in another vote, Labour MPs might vote for another inquiry.
Well, I mean, look, these are hypotheticals, and what I've got in front of me...
We quite like hypotheticals.
What I've got as a backbench MP in front of me is a bit of legislation that I did not want to see wrecked because it protects children. The Conservatives were trying to wreck that and essentially destroy the chances of us protecting children, and that's not acceptable, and that makes me really angry.
Are you grateful to Elon Musk for highlighting this issue and putting it on the news agenda?
Look, Elon Musk is a very talented man. he could get humans to Mars.
Yeah, I mean, the guy literally pulls rockets out of space with chopsticks, right?
And I think it's really impressive what he's done in the past, and also with Tesla and moving forward that electric vehicle initiative. He's well and truly entitled to his opinions, and it's as simple
including
as
that Keir Starmer should be in prison.
He's entitled to his opinions.
Jess Phillips is a rape genocide apologist.
These are disgusting comments. comments which we have to call out.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he's well and truly entitled.
Some of your
to say
colleagues are
what he
clamouring for a harder line to be taken on websites like X, and legislation currently on the statute book and possibly being tightened up. The online safety bill.
Yeah.
Would you like to see comments like rape genocide apologists being censored?
What I'd like to see from Elon Musk, if he's watching.
I'm sure he does. He doesn't miss an episode, does Elon?
I very much hope he is that he works with politicians, because he is the owner of one of the most powerful social media companies on the planet. And actually, he can help us, combat things like child grooming, because that is often where this.
Are you hopeful that he's going to be an ally to this government? He wants to bang up the Prime Minister.
I very much hope that he'll work with politicians to take on this vile, child grooming and paedophilia.
But do you think that the Prime Minister should just sit there and take it? I mean, look, who is this guy? An aspiring Bond villain, world's richest man. If he didn't exist, you could barely write him as a credible character in world politics. Yet the Prime Minister sort of seems to, apart from Monday, basically accusing him of, not even naming him, but saying he shouldn't spread disinformation. He's basically taking the punches, isn't he? Shouldn't he be coming out and saying, who are you?
Look, what we've got in Keir Starmer, Harry, is a serious,
a man that throws some punches?
A serious Prime Minister.
And but a serious Prime Minister with a record-breaking unpopularity in just 6 months.
We've now got stability in
Have
this
we?
country
Look at the bond
under Keir
market.
Starmer, which means we can govern over the next few years and deliver. So he probably doesn't want to get sucked into
It doesn't feel that
media.
stable right now, does it? Were you expecting to be 6 months into government facing Liz Truss levels of borrowing and a tanking pound?
Look, what we've seen from Rachel Reeves in the budget is laying those foundations for growth, and that's hopefully what we'll see over the coming years. And that enables more money to go into our public services. And by the way, we're already seeing that with investment in the NHS, bringing down waiting lists from 18 months to 18 weeks for treatment. That's really important. That's going to save lives, Harry. That's what people
Chris
want
Philp
to
sat
see.
in that chair moments ago and said that Rachel Reeves, during this market turmoil, shouldn't be going to China, shouldn't be leaving the country. Do you agree with that? Should she be staying here and sorting the markets out?
Look, we will, of course, be negotiating and speaking with international partners and international governments to ensure that we're getting the best deals for the people here.
Yeah, but last time a Chancellor left the country, when borrowing was at this level, was Kwasi Kwarteng in October 2022, and he flew home and got fired. Should the Chancellor be leaving the country this week when there's turmoil in the market?
I'm convinced that the Chancellor will travel if it's going to benefit the people in this country. That's what this is about. It's about delivering for the people of Britain. kowtowing
to the Chinese? How's that sit with you as a man that knows his way around the British security infrastructure? It's definitely a change in tone towards China, who are one of the biggest threats this country faces.
So I see that there's no doubt we have to be cautious of the Chinese, but there's no getting away from the fact that they are a growing economy. And of course, we've got to be engaging with them in order to deliver for the people here. And that's what's most important.
Let's talk about another issue that's obviously massively important to you. As the MP for Dover, you could not be more on the front line of the small boats crisis. President Macron jets in for, I don't know what he's going to be fed at Chequers tonight, but he's having dinner with the Prime Minister. And clearly here to collect his cheque. £500 million a year we're paying the French. To stop small boats. Look at the statistics. Every day that there are crossings, we see the same more people coming over than the French are stopping on the beaches. Is that £500 million value for money for the constituents of Dover?
So it's important that we work with international partners.
Yeah, sure. But are we getting value for money there?
That begins with the French and ensuring that they've got the capabilities to stop boats from launching is really important. But this goes further. This goes further. What we've got to remember is we've inherited open borders. So 400 crossed in 2018. Over 150,000 have crossed since. The majority of that was on the Conservatives' watch. So we have inherited.
The rates are up for this year and have gone up since July.
We haven't, but not on what we call red days, where it's viable for crossings because of the weather. So, this isn't an easy fix. There is no magic wand to fix this overnight. But what we've done so far...
There is, though, because Macron could, if he wanted to, accept, instead of essentially acting as a lifeboat service and ferrying these boats into British waters until they're then picked up by the Navy, he could turn them round. He could take them back to France.
So what we're doing so far...
Why is he not doing that?
Well, this is a conversation between the Prime Minister and Macron. But what we're doing so far is we've set up the Border Security Command. Now, this, for me, is really important. Combined with that, there's those international relationships being formed with the Iraqis, the Germans, the Italians, the French, Belgium, Dutch, Italians. But the Border Security Command will bring in those extra powers and tools.
Well,
For example,
or is it just
MI5.
another management consultants, reorganisation of how the Home Office works?
Not at all.
So far, it seems to be a brass plate.
Let me go a bit further in explaining exactly what that will do and what that means. Because we say counter-terror tools, we say we're going to treat the smuggling gangs like terrorists. Now, I've worked against criminal gangs and against terrorists, so I've seen the difference those powers can make. Now, often it's hard to meet the evidential threshold to charge terrorists and criminal gangs because they're very complex in their operations and often international. Now, if we bring in these disruptive parts of the legislation, for example, stopping bank accounts, ensuring that
but these guys don't operate in bank accounts. They're cash in hand. They're criminal gangs. They're not. There's no assets you can seize in this country, and they're not using PayPal.
Let me go further. You can also ensure that they can't speak to certain people, they can't use phones, they can't use the internet. So there's a lot we can do to disrupt. And what that means is if we can't meet the evidential threshold to charge, we can stop these vile criminals from operating in the UK and then working with international partners.
David Lammy today
upstream
coming out and saying we're going to treat criminal gangs like oligarchs and we're going to put Kremlin-style sanctions on them. How many criminal smuggling gang kingpins are operating out of the UK with British bank accounts? It's gibberish, right?
Well, there is a domestic angle. And
how many of this clampdown announced today that sanctioning criminal? How many of these people is this actually going to catch?
Look, I haven't got the full
3?
Intelligence picture myself because that's very sensitive. But another part of bringing MI5 into this fight is we can form an accurate intelligence picture. They're the best in the world, without doubt.
But they're already stretched to breaking point, literally breaking point, in the fact that they've got the increased jihadi threat, returning people from the Middle East who are coming here. They've got the rise of the far right. They are already at breaking point.
This is a national security issue. If we've got border security failing, that's a national security issue.
Sure, but are you going to match it? Are you going to match? I mean, they're going to need more money for this, and so far there has not really been forthcoming.
So look, we've got £180 million being invested in the Border Security Command over the next 2 years, and look, bringing in MI5 to the fight will have an impact because I've seen the difference that these powers makes in the way that they take on terrorists. So bear in mind the way that the MI5 are judged on their record is stopping things from happening. It's not necessarily putting people in prison as much as that's the end goal. Yeah. And if we can stop these
smuggling
gangs.
So when will we have a viable? The great mission, Keir Starmer's great missions unveiled late last year or early this year. God, I can't even remember. There was no mention of smashing the gangs as a mission. When will we be able to definitively say the gangs have been smashed?
So actually, just on Keir Starmer's speech at the end of last year, that was a foundation for all of the missions. So actually it's a top priority along with national security.
But when will we be able to say, this has been a success or judge it otherwise?
Well, it's difficult to put a date on it. And the reason for that... and
that's because it's just a 3-word slogan. It's no better than stop the boats, is it?
Commentators love to put a date on something. I get that.
I think voters like to put a date on something.
And I completely understand
Will you smash the gangs by the next election?
If you speak to those operating on the ground, they won't put a date on it. And the reason is because it's a very complex issue. But we'll certainly start having an impact, and I hope to see that this year.
Let's talk about people operating on the ground. The National Crime Agency, an agency dear to your heart, they have said that without a deterrent, as well as all of the other things that Border Force, the Navy and the MI5 and the Home Office are doing, without a credible deterrent, you won't be able to dramatically reduce the number of crossings. What is Labour's deterrent?
One person said that. And
one person who happened to be a very senior figure in the National Crime Agency.
When we look back at what the Conservatives were telling us was the deterrent, it wasn't. 4 were deported voluntarily.
Yeah, but offshore
processing.
Processing is a concept that is not just being looked at by the United Kingdom. The Italians are doing it, the Danes are looking at it, the Americans are looking at it. Was it a mistake to, in a sort of fit of political pique, scrap the one deterrent option that we had, rather than seeing if you could improve it?
So, firstly, we've deported 13,500.
Foreign criminals who deserve to be deported anyway. They're not deported. That's not an increase in deporting.
That is up 25%.
Yeah, you've got
and we're
more
up
planes.
19% on foreign criminal deportations. That's really important because if people are coming here illegally with no right to be here,
Of course, but
they need to be
but
deported.
that's the basics. That is what
happening,
that's the
Harry,
baseline of what a government is doing.
Yeah.
This is a deterrent, needs to go further than that. What deterrent will Labour have?
So you say it's the basics, but that wasn't happening. So what Angela and Yvette have done in this very short period of time is got the Home Office working. You know, they've got that doing the day job essentially, so that the processing has sped up. So those who shouldn't be here are deported, and those that need the help receive it. That is a deterrent because if you're being deported,
it's clearly not working
because you
though,
shouldn't be here, then that will eventually cut through to those.
If you're going to
over.
risk your life and limb and loved ones by getting in a boat, 61 people crossed on what was an ice cold day earlier this year. There is clearly no deterrent if you're willing to risk your life to make that crossing.
So we'll continue.
What are you going
to
do?
the smuggling
It's clearly not working.
Treat them like terrorists. And what I say to those who are, looking to cross is don't risk your life because you may well die and they're being exploited. And that's why we're taking on the smuggling gangs with such vigour. And we'll continue to go after them. And it will get worse
France
for the
is a
smuggling
safe country.
gangs. It is a safe country.
So why is Macron literally sort of, guiding them onto the boats?
Oh, that's not happening.
Well, it might as well be. They're clearly stopping fewer than that are crossing.
So we have seen a significant amount stopped. The figures did come out last year, but I can't remember off the top of my head what they were, but they were very high. And that is working. Also, if you see what's happening in Belgium, where crossings have reduced significantly, and that's because of the work that the British have been doing with them as well. So we look to replicate that in France.
So what are the Belgians doing? Well, final question. What are the Belgians doing that the French aren't?
Well, it's hard to say exactly, but I know it's using some of our assets to ensure that we're identifying those that are looking to cross.
Yeah.
But of course, a lot of that information is sensitive for obvious reasons because
Well,
we don't want the smuggling gangs, knowing
so
exactly what we're doing.
A secret plan to smash the gangs is working, but we just might not ever see it.
There's absolutely no secret in the fact that we're bringing in the security services, we're funding the Border Security Command, we're ensuring that there's those international relationships in place to take on the smuggling gangs. No secret there. There'll be tactics and techniques that, of course, shouldn't be talked about openly.
Mike Tapp, MP for Dover.
Thank you.
Rising star, soon to be a minister, no doubt. Thank you for coming on Never Mind the Ballots.
Thank you.